All right, everyone. Welcome to our last concurrent session of the day 2 of the NOAA conference. We're thrilled to have you guys here. Today's session is entitled Healing the Healers, Instrumental Music Learning to Promote Resilience and Wellbeing in Healthcare Workers. And I just want to remind you all that we will have some time at the end of the presentation for questions. It should be somewhere around 5 to 7 minutes. And if you have questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat at any time, and I'll be taking a look at those and helping the presenters by asking those questions for you. Also, remember to keep the conversation going by visiting the Attendify app and sharing thoughts in the activity stream or in the session chat. And make sure that people get a chance to post on Twitter and Facebook if you have responses, and tag NOAA in those posts. Today's sessions have been focused on rebuilding our foundations. That was our focus area for day 2. And I would like to introduce our speakers today. We're really happy to have the following speakers with us. Tanya Maggi. She is the Dean of Community Engagement and Professional Development at Professional Studies, at New England Conservatory of Music. Dr. Kathy May Tran from the Massachusetts General Hospital, and Luther Warren, violinist and violist. Welcome to our panelists, and you can take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So happy to be here today. And I was just recalling 2 years ago being at the Live NOAA conference in Boston. And boy, has a lot happened since then. So it's just really wonderful to be back in this community. My name is Tanya Maggi. I'm the Dean of Community Engagement and Professional Studies at New England Conservatory. And just so we can have introductions from all of our panelists, I'll just pass it over to Luther. Next to do an introduction.
Hi, I'm Luther Warren. I'm a violinist, violist, and music teacher, and I'm also a graduate student at the New England Conservatory, or NEC, in Boston. And I'll pass it to Kathy.
Hi, my name is Kathy May Tran. I work at Massachusetts General Hospital in the hospital medicine unit.
Great. So we're really excited to delve into a project that has been so much a part of our life in the last year and a half. I know personally it's brought me such joy, and it has really had a ripple effect across the institution I represent, New England Conservatory. And I think it captures not only the kind of ingenuity and resilience that so many of us have experienced out of this time, but also it really just points to the promise of personal relationship building, and a group of people digging in and going deep and learning how to work together across 2 different industries, conservatory and a hospital. So I'm going to pass this over to Kathy to get us rolling and give us some of the backdrop that kind of launched this project.
Definitely. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and joining us. I'm so honored to be here at NOAA and also alongside Tanya and Luther. Today, we'll be talking about the Boston Music Teaching Project. So we'll share how it came to be and how it's implemented, the amazing impact that has far exceeded our or anyone's expectations. And then we'll have time at the end to talk about how it might be replicated in other parts of the country so that more people can benefit. So, in the spring of 2020 was kind of when all of this started. At that time, all of us, regardless of our field, had seen COVID in its first peak. As I mentioned, I work at Massachusetts General Hospital, which is the flagship hospital of Harvard Medical School in Boston, Massachusetts. And specifically, I'm a doctor in the hospital medicine unit, which means that I specialize in the care of patients who are sick enough to be admitted. It also means that my colleagues and I were on the front lines of the hospital that saw the most COVID inpatients of any hospital in the state of Massachusetts, and more COVID inpatients than all of the non-Boston hospitals in New England combined. So needless to say, in the biggest crisis of our generation, we were overwhelmed. But, despite it all, we put our heads down, soldiered on, and did what we're trained to do, which is take care of patients. So we tried hard to identify problems and solve them. And for example, one of the problems that we saw was that we had more patients than we had beds. So in the spring of 2020, my hospital system, the state of Massachusetts, the city of Boston, and a number of key institutions came together to, figure out how to make a field hospital. What happened is a 1,000 bed field hospital came out in the Boston Convention Center. In 9 days, all of this came together, and this was called Boston Hope. So when Boston Hope came to be, it became very clear very quickly that caring for COVID patients and the healthcare workers who were caring for the COVID patients was much more than prescribing antipyretics and antitussives and antivirals and therapy. There was something foundational that we needed at that time, and energy to go on, a resilience to survive, really, and a personal connection, because isolation was so overwhelming and the burden was quite profound. And we found that that could happen through music. So Lisa Wong and Ron Hirschberg, who are two doctors at Massachusetts General Hospital and also at Boston Hope, came together to found Boston Hope Music, a wellness initiative at Boston Hope. The first program that happened was musical dosages. Music was collected from professional musicians around the community and curated, and then healthcare workers would prescribe these musical dosages in morning, noon, at nighttime. And it was an overwhelmingly successful program. So at the beginning of the summer, Boston Hope closed its doors. So the cots and the partitions and the equipment went to storage, but Boston Hope Music did not. And actually, the work was just beginning and really, blossomed in growth and impact. And this is where I started to meet wonderful people, movers and shakers and dear friends through Boston Hope Music, such as Tanya, our Dean of Community Engagement at the New England Conservatory, who will speak next.
Great. So this is kind of where NEC entered. So it was late March 2020, and I got a phone call after a long day of Zooming with students who had literally scattered across the globe. I was talking to them in their bedrooms. They were in every country you can imagine, really just asking the question, how do I matter right now? I'm not essential. How do I matter? How does music matter? And Lisa texted me and said, hey, do you want to be part of Boston Hope? Do you want to have students record musical doses? And so I spread the word, and within 2 days, we had 4 hours of content. Students were sending anything that they could possibly record in their home studios. And it was enormously impactful on the students who participated. When this project closed down, I think the next question was, well, what comes next? And what really percolated to the top, especially in the conversations between Dr. Lisa Wong and Dr. Ronnie Hirschberg, was how do we care for the caregivers? How do we heal the healers? And what emerged from conversations in those early days was this idea of really going into the practice of learning an instrument. Of jumping in and learning something new, but done in a context of care and support and more than just a transaction of teaching a music lesson. And those early conversations did not actually involve me initially, but involved a couple of our alumni. So actually, if we go to the next slide, you can see that there's this beautiful matrix of different organizations coming together. So there were 2 alums of NEC who represented Windsor Music and Eureka Ensemble, and they started this conversation, and it quickly grew to encompass all of our organizations. And we found ourselves on Friday mornings, basically around a virtual kitchen table, sharing ideas, brainstorming, throwing spaghetti at the wall, and just seeing what would work. And we came up with the idea, hey, let's start this teaching project. Let's get some NEC students involved. Let's try this all virtually and see what happens. And you can see just this beautiful amalgam of all these organizations coming together. On the next slide, you'll see that not only did we launch the teaching project, which really became kind of a foundation of the year, but a lot of other things percolated to the top that were equally wonderful, that we're not going to spend time talking about today. But just for some context, we also had music at vaccination centers, a wonderful project with 2 NEC songwriting students, working with nurses on the MICU unit at MGH to create original music. Wonderful projects. Also not shown here was involvement with Harvard Medical students who were leading virtual bedside concerts. So NEC students and Harvard Medical students working together in a shared space. But the teaching project is really where we dug in and create sort of a sustained ongoing partnership throughout the whole year. So I'm going to launch it over to Luther to talk a little bit more specifically about the teaching project.
And actually, maybe I'll say a couple more things if that's okay. So meanwhile, as Boston Hope and Boston Hope Music are forming, meanwhile, when Tanya's having these conversations, I was on the ground at Massachusetts General, and through the wellness initiative that I lead there called the Happiness Committee, I was losing sleep thinking about my colleagues who were giving so much of themselves and working with a disease that we didn't know anything about at that time, spending time away from their families and putting their own lives at risk and trying to figure out a way to take care of them. So we put together a number of initiatives, and one of them was hosting a conversation with Yo-Yo Ma. And through this was a virtual conversation in which healthcare workers shared with him what was going on inside the hospital at the time. And he was sharing with him his wonderful perspective and also the healing power of music. And because we knew what was going on at Boston Hope and the stressors and the burdens they were feeling there, we also invited the healthcare workers to join us. And so this is really what set into motion the partnership between NEC, Boston Hope, and Mass General Hospital, because all of us knew what was facing healthcare workers all this time. All of us identified the problem, but I think that the solution we realized was there was a phenomenon of convergent evolution, because we realized that music could be one way that we could target these problems. So I've alluded to the life of a doctor. We spend a lot of times, thinking about our patients, nights, days, weekends, holidays. We do that because this is what we're trained to do. We take care of people, but we are just people. And one thing that we're not trained to do, and we don't know how to do, and I would venture to say that we're actually discouraged from doing in our society, sadly, is to take care of ourselves and to prioritize our own well-being. And that's why the burnout rate of hospitalists, even before the pandemic, was upwards of 45%. So this caring for others without caring for ourselves in the long run is not effective, it's not safe, it's not healthy, it's not sustainable. And there's a great quote from the Dalai Lama that we say often, that if you don't love yourself, you cannot love others. And if you don't show yourself compassion, you can't show compassion to other people. And that's where the Boston Hope Music Teaching Project comes in. So in Boston Hope Music, concurrent and parallel to the conversations with the NEC alum and Tanya and the Boston Hope Music team, we were brainstorming, hey, how do we take care of these healthcare workers and help them grow and give them a creative outlet? And this is how the Boston Hope Music Teaching Project came to be. Indeed, it was a one-to-one instrumental music learning program, but it's much more than music lessons. And that's because of the design that we'll talk about in a little bit. And because the healthcare workers and the fellows, the teachers, are matched so carefully based on personality and interest and values, these relationships turned into much more than just a teacher-student relationship. So in forming the teaching project, we realized that the stress, the uncertainty, the fear, the anxiety that healthcare workers were feeling, this was trauma. And the healing that we were giving through music lessons or musical dosages to the healthcare workers, this was trauma-informed care. So, trauma-informed care, or TIC, is actually a fundamental concept in medicine. It's existed for decades. It's not a direct therapy per se, but it's more of an approach to how we doctors might treat a person who has had trauma. And it's built upon a few key concepts: physical and psychological safety, trustworthy and transparency, peer support and trust, collaboration and mutuality, and empowerment of voice. And this is something, once again, I keep saying we're trained to do, but one thing we were not trained to do is to have a role reversal here. So in the Boston Hope Music Teaching Project, all of a sudden, we healthcare workers didn't have the expectation that we had to provide trauma-informed care. All of a sudden, we had to take a step back and turn that part of ourselves off and be the ones to receive trauma-informed care. We enlisted the help of our colleague, hospital-based licensed music therapist, Lori Kubicek, who is also at Mass General Hospital, to help guide this mindfulness of trauma-informed care in the program, so that everything from the design and the organization all the way to the training of the teaching fellows could be based in trauma-informed care. And so this is how the connection that I had to my own teacher in Kindred Spirit, who I'm profoundly grateful to for the last year, learning not only the violin and the viola, but also more about myself and our place in the world, Luther Warren.
Yeah, so here's where I come into the picture. So in March of 2020, while the world was shutting down and while Kathy's hospital was filling with COVID patients, I and my fellow musicians were seeing our entire seasons canceled practically overnight. We were wondering, when or even whether we would be able to work again. I lost months of concerts and festivals. My students, who I was used to seeing weekly face-to-face, now were trying to figure out microphones and Zoom accounts so they could continue their education in some form. My own education was also jeopardized. The graduate program I was in at the New England Conservatory, which is really based on performance, based on being in person, being able to rehearse together and perform together. The audiences went all remote just before spring break, with little to no backup plan in place for how to proceed. Ordinarily, even the life of a classical musician, with its many years of training, its long hours in practice rooms, the demands on location and traveling, and its honestly often marginal relationship to mainstream culture, can feel quite isolating. Although most musicians are really passionate about their art form, it's not uncommon for them to also struggle with finding a sense of greater purpose in their work as well. And I have to say that, in this moment of the pandemic, I will never forget the feeling of total uselessness, really helplessness that I felt watching the world melt down around me and not being able to reach anyone with my work. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. So, faced with no work and no studies, I elected to pack up and head out of Boston to my family's home in Minneapolis. I just decided that, all things considered, I'd rather be with family. We can go to the next slide. When the fall semester at my school started, I was still in Minneapolis. I was now studying remotely. Divorced from the world of performing, I was also looking for things to do. More than this, I was looking to do something, really anything, to use my profession to have some kind of impact on the terrifying events unfolding in the world around me. So through the department that Tanya runs at the conservatory, I applied for a community engagement fellowship. In the interview process, I met Tanya, and I was really excited when she shared about the Boston Hope Music Teaching Project that was in the works, and asked if I'd be interested in being a part of it. Of course, I was interested. I said this sounded like a dream that had come true. The teaching project recruits healthcare workers at MGH through an open call by public announcement, but it recruits its graduate student teaching fellows from the New England Conservatory through this process that I went through. Because those who apply for these fellowships already are interested in this kind of work, and because of the interview process itself, the teachers that are part of the teaching project are self-selected to be highly motivated in applying their artistry to this kind of work already. And then once selected, MGH healthcare workers and NEC student teachers are carefully paired in one-to-one matches based on instrument specialty first, and especially based on personality. The process really tries to match people to be great fits with each other. Over the course of the teaching project, 33 healthcare workers and 20 graduate student teachers from NEC have participated. Next slide. After I was recruited into the program, I was excited to meet my learner match, Kathy. First over email, and then for our first lesson. Kathy was very personable, and I felt like I quickly got to know her more as a friend than just as a student. The teaching sessions happen remotely over Zoom, something which removes any concerns about COVID exposure. At the time that this program was first being developed, that was a very strong concern for many people. It solves many of the scheduling challenges that might normally be prohibitive to busy people, and it allows it to be location independent, which even allowed me to participate all the way from Minneapolis, so that was critical. um, Sessions take place at roughly a weekly interval, although specific expectations for time and workload are avoided so that it doesn't feel like a burden. The level of work is also very free and scalable. So, for example, Kathy had already played the violin and viola wonderfully because she studied them as a kid, but many of my colleagues were teaching people who had never even touched an instrument before. All levels really are welcome in the teaching project. And the teaching sessions also don't need to feel like they're confined to an educational model. Although traditional musical instruction is certainly the basis of these sessions, I found that the sessions would often turn away from music lessons and into more of just a conversation between friends. Next slide. The teaching sessions are supported by a robust program which really informs their purpose. So before meeting my match, I enjoyed participating in the trauma-informed care training session. And as a music teacher with years of experience in teaching lessons, I was used to thinking of them really as educational. So this session was really important to me because it did frame the project as something different, something more therapeutic in intent. And then throughout the program, there were also activities designed to build greater community. So there were weekly video journaling prompts where participants shared more about their life or their lessons that week. There were group reflections where these thoughts were discussed among participants. There were check-in sessions both for my colleagues and separately for MGH workers. There were share and tell events featuring musical performances, some of which you'll be seeing in a video later on. There were surveys which were useful both in just gathering information to shape the future of the program and also which prompted more quantitative reflection for participants about how the project had affected their life. And then later, when the pandemic permitted, there were also social gatherings, which were mostly just for fun. So it was really amazing to get to meet all of the people involved and to hear about what this project meant to them. And so now that I've told you a lot about this project, I'd actually like to share a video where you'll get to meet some of these people yourselves and hear from them in their own words. We can go to the video.
So what's your name? What do you do around here?
I'm Gabrielle Broberg. I'm one of the hospitalists here at MGH.
I'm Phil Amrine, and I work in the Leukemia Disease Center here at Mass General.
So what's your name? What do you do around here?
I'm Gabrielle Broberg. I'm one of the hospitalists here at MGH.
I'm Phil Amrine, and I work in the Leukemia Disease Center here. Here at Mass General.
My name is Theodora Nesterova, and I am an NEC student voice teacher.
My name is Elizabeth, and this is my roommate, Jessica.
We're both harpists, and we've been teaching piano lessons for Boston Hope this semester.
So this is Katie, and Katie plays the violin with her cat, and Revati, who's studying voice.
Hi, this is Emma. This is cardiac step-down unit, so I'm one of the nurses here.
And I hear you're a musician.
I am. Yes, this is my ukulele. So I started picking up ukulele last year during COVID.
I do have a lot of musical instruments, but I don't know if that qualifies as a musician, but I've gotten closer to being a musician because of my great teachers.
Who are you learning with, and what's it been like?
I am learning with Lucy Little, and it's been absolutely amazing.
I've been working with Lizzie. She has an extraordinary voice, and she's been teaching me how to train my voice, and she also gave me some confidence that I can sing someday.
I'm learning from Delphina, who is an amazing, amazing vocalist.
Sounds like you're an amazing match.
Indeed, a match made in heaven, and friends, so that's fun.
What goes on during your lessons?
We talk about everything, not just about the music. We sometimes talk about the music itself. We talked about the music that we like, and it turned out we have the similar taste. We have some singers that we really like, and then sometimes we talk about random things like bubble tea.
Well, my main experience is to see how much patience Jessica has with me. I've been kind of slow to improve, but I think I have improved some. So I've been very happy about that.
It's been really rewarding working with many different healthcare workers, and we've had so much fun. We come home singing the songs that our students are learning.
This is definitely true. I ended up with Jurassic Park stuck in my head for a really long time from Jessica's student.
We not only talk about music, we talk about life in general. I had a few people in my family that have passed away, and I was very sad, and we talked about it, and she listened, and she gave me advice, and just listening to her sing, sometimes she would just sing, and it would just be like, everything would just be all right with me at that moment. And when you're in her presence, when she looks at you, you know that she's truly listening to you. And with that being said, I say I am grateful. I take my hats off to her.
Does your learning music affect your life or your work or your family?
Oh yeah, I feel like my daughter is starting like learning piano too, so I feel like I'm more close to her.
I try to bring my ukulele to work as much as possible. Sometimes my patients will ask me about my ukulele, or sometimes I'm just sad, or sometimes I just want to like play a couple tunes.
What has music been to you during the pandemic, and what will it be to you after the pandemic?
Well, during the pandemic, really just became a source of tuning, especially with all politics and everything. Everything combined, it just became a zone out time, like we talked about, an escape.
It's an amazing way to decompress after a tough week.
It gives me a channel to like express myself, not through my nursing or my schoolwork. It gives me a dedicated time to let go of my life.
It's affected me in a lot of great ways because it's been able to just keep me calm and keep me present in the moment.
I always felt exhausted after a day's work, and I just didn't have a right thing to do after going home except watching TV. But music has given me something to look forward to, going home and doing something which actually brings a smile on people at home, because sometimes I can play good and that sounds good and everybody likes it.
Obviously it's been a really tough year for everybody, and I think certainly for those of us in the hospital setting, it has meant a lot of putting your personal life and goals and dreams on hold. And so having the opportunity to sing in the Boston Hope program has meant tapping into this whole other part of myself that in some ways has been really dormant in the context of my medical training. So it's been really terrific to kind of unlock that side of me.
It takes me away from some problems of the day, and you can't fix all the medical problems you're faced, but sometimes if you can make the music sound nice on a piano, it's such a positive thing.
I'm just really grateful for the opportunity, so thank you.
It has given such purpose to this year, to this challenging time. I'm just so incredibly overjoyed and grateful.
Thank you, Boston Hope Music!
So clearly lots of good feelings all the way around, and it turned out that those good feelings were shared not just from participants within the program, but also from outsiders about the program. So the project ended up generating quite a bit of press and was featured in multiple media outlets, and academically it was also invited to present at the Society of General Internal Medicine. And now I'll hand it over to Kathy to talk a little bit about what makes this teaching project special.
So we shared with you about the Boston Hope Music Teaching Project and how we structured it. And I do hope that we've conveyed how its impact is incredibly tremendous and way, way much more profound than we ever thought. So what makes it special? Why has it been such a big deal for the musicians and the healthcare workers involved? We think the crux of it is those personal relationships. I know that I've gotten a lot of support from Luther. I think that he'll be a friend for a very long time, and it's this support system that we're used to not getting as healthcare workers in a time that we really needed it. The second thing is the trauma-informed care. We were incredibly mindful and deliberate in every aspect of the program to make this a supportive environment for everyone involved, for the musicians and for the healthcare workers, and to draw upon those principles of safety and trust and collaboration.
And another thing that makes this really special is a lot of the discussion and work centered around the therapeutic benefits of music focuses on the passive listening to music, but this is really about active music making. And active music making is such a demanding thing. It involves the body, mind, and soul. It happens in real time. It's very difficult to hide anything when you're making music, and so that transparency lends itself very well to having that therapeutic potential. And then it's also, the more than even just about active music making, this is really about music lessons, actually, about the process of learning music and what that can bring to a therapeutic benefit. And so that process is it's introspective, but it's also very collaborative. Making music in lessons, it requires the learner to really look within themselves to find that creativity, to find that vision for what they're trying to express emotionally. But then the instructor is really trying to get a sense of that from the learner as well, and to kind of work with that and to bounce back their own emotional relationship with the music that they're working towards, and then also to inform the process of how to actually get that out of the instrument. So it creates an environment where both people are really willing to go to places emotionally where they might not really have been willing to in other contexts, and that kind of vulnerability also really lends itself well to an application of trauma-informed care. And then the last thing that I think really makes this program very special is that it's mutually beneficial to all participants. A lot of this is focusing obviously on caring for the caregivers, on caring for healthcare workers. But I have to say that as the project unfolded, I found that it was really caring for me also. It gave me a perspective and a meaning in my work that I hadn't quite found before. And then also just in an educational sense, these are me and my colleagues, we are graduate students at the conservatory. And so, a lot of my colleagues had not much teaching experience or no teaching experience prior to engaging with this project. So even as part of the curriculum of the conservatory, it's an important experience to develop those tools that are really vital to the education and the tool set of a professional musician later on. And so now I'll pass it off to Tanya.
Great. Yeah. So, just a couple of quotes here, and this whole video will be shared in the future, so you can read those in more detail. But, one thing that I'll just say is the ripple effect of this program across the conservatory. So not just the students like Lizzie here, who's featured, had just deep impact on their own lives, but talking to their friends and their colleagues, and the way that it just kind of gave the whole conservatory a lift was just extraordinary. And I think someone in the chat asked that question of how do you make these matches? How do you create these perfect matches? I'd like to say a lot of them really were beyond anything we could have imagined. And a lot of that was just taking the time and being really intentional about the relationships. Kathy and I spent hours sitting with lists of students and learners and figuring out, just how they might fit together. And that, I think, was a huge part of the success of the program and continues to be. A couple things about replicating. So if we go to the next slide, we've talked about, how do we replicate this? And I think key is finding the right people, the right partners to have those deep conversations and be really intentional about the program planning. Assessing the needs on both sides. So again, on the conservatory side, we were really looking at, the students who were hungry to be able to be relevant and really matter, and have these kinds of relationships as part of their growth. Determining the scope, so figuring out how big. We intentionally kept it at a cap of 25 learners because we felt like if we got too big, we'd lose some of that intimacy, and some of the social gatherings would just get too big. Recruiting the partner institutions, so finding who are the right partners, and then just figuring out how to energize the community around it. So finding the right people to spread the word, finding the right systems and mechanisms to be able to implement the programs in ways that really have impact. And then we have an additional slide before we are getting close to our wrap-up time, we know, and we want to make sure we can answer some of the questions that are coming in. We're figuring out what comes next. We've got lots of projects on the back burner, so the innovative programming, we're just continuing to develop. Evolving purpose. What happens when COVID is in the rearview mirror? Where do we go? How do we keep these relationships going? How do these relationships get deeper, which they already are? But how do we build on the foundation that we have? Lots of ideas, from creating a choir at the hospital to a string orchestra to lessons in music theory. And then we have questions around reach. Are we going to expand within MGH? Are we looking to expand to other hospitals? How can we help other institutions like ours build programs like this? And this is all what lies before us as we're trying to figure out our next steps. And then I think just quickly to say some photos of our time together and all the joy, from picnics to impromptu music making gatherings, recordings, playing at vaccination centers. So lots of music making in action here. And I'll hand it back over to Kathy to wrap us up.
So thank you so much. The last thing we wanted to share was a video that's made by the teachers and learners.
Great.
Thank you, Kathy, Tanya, and Luther. What a beautiful, beautiful program that came together during such a difficult time, and just having all that creativity. We literally have like a minute left, but real quickly, like in that minute, could you guys talk a little bit about, we had a couple questions more about funding. Like people really wanted to know, like, were any of the teachers paid, or how is this supported?
Great. Yeah, I can grab that one. And I was just composing something in the chat on that one. So in the initial year, when this started, we actually pivoted our robust work study program to specifically fund this program. So we did pay the teachers a modest stipend that was in keeping with our other teaching fellowships that we have. Since then, we've also partnered with MGH, who I don't know if Kathy, you want to say anything about this, but we have now received some funding to supplement. So it's now the two of us working together. So some work study funding that we already had, along with funds from MGH now to pay the teachers.
Right. I think that the impact of this program has been so great. We don't have to justify it to our hospital anymore. And so we were applied for and given a grant from our hospital as a wellness initiative for all healthcare workers. Since we don't have a lot of time, I do want to point out that these are our emails on the screen. We'll also be on Attendify too, if anyone wants to leave questions there. But we really believe in this program a lot, and we hope that you can have a similar program wherever you are. So please keep in touch with us and send us an email if you would like.
Thank you. Yes, we do have to wrap it up. Thank you again for this amazing presentation. I just would like to just say to the group, definitely stay in touch, reach out to them. And then also we are ending the day today, and it feels fitting after this presentation, with an open mic networking session. So that starts right after this. So if you've got, if you've signed up for that in terms of being able to show us your creative side, great, we're looking forward to seeing you. And then please join us, because we are going to do some meet and greets in between each of the performances. So thanks again, and have a lovely evening, everyone.